I'm Rick Kaler. Thanks for joining me. In a recent column on ways to share an unneeded stimulus check, I suggested you could consider giving it to someone struggling to pay the rent. Initially, I added a line that said, doing so will benefit both the renter and the landlord. Upon my final review of the article, I deleted that sentence. And you ask why? Well, I was concerned that some readers might flinch at the very thought of helping out a landlord. In my experience, many Americans hold manuscripts that landlords are wealthy, powerful oppressors. Just think of the villainous stereotype from old melodramas. I can't pay the rent. You must pay the rent. I don't know, I'm thinking of one that might tie them up and put them on a railroad track or something. This belief comes from an incomplete understanding what it means to own rental property. The very word landlord implies wealth, authority, and status. As with many other assumptions, the beliefs people project onto the word are very often different from reality. Imagine that. While being a landlord can be a path to wealth, authority, and status, it can and often does involve financial struggle, loss, and powerlessness. That might be surprising to you that could be the case. And it also might be surprising to learn that mom and pop investors with an average of 2 properties each own almost half of all the residential rental units in the United States. Some interesting research is summarized in an article on the HUD website by Todd M. Richardson, who's acting General Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy Development and Research. That's a mouthful. He notes that the 2015 American Housing Survey found that there are nearly 48.5 million rental units in the U.S., and of those, 22.5 million are owned by 10.6 million individual investors, or an average of 2 units per individual landlord. These units are typically single-family homes, duplexes, and small apartment buildings. The other half, or 25.8 million units, are mostly larger apartment complexes owned by around 1 million businesses. So average ownership of those businesses is about 20 units. So most landlords, whether individuals or businesses, have mortgages against their property. After paying expenses such as insurance, maintenance, repairs, taxes, and utilities, and then their mortgage payments, they are typically happy to break even. The only time you really make money, cash flow, on real estate is when it's fully paid off. So while larger businesses tend to be able to carry reserves to fund a short-term downturn in occupancy and are more professionally run, individual investors usually have little to no reserves. Unlike the larger landlords, when their single unit properties are empty or miss a rent payment, they lose 100% of their rental income. With a larger property, say with 100 units, if 10% of their units don't pay or move out, they lose 10% of their income. To make their mortgage payment, these individual landlords usually need to dig into their income from their own family budget or from their employment to cover the payment. As the unemployment rolls explode, the COVID-19 crisis is just beginning to affect individual landlords. And many of these landlords will soon be facing mortgage payments, property taxes, and maintenance costs that they may struggle to pay. Even more threatening, many municipalities are considering freezing rents or requiring landlords to forgive up to 3 months of rent. My guess is such a requirement would cause some individual landlords to declare bankruptcy. Others may need to obtain loans to pay their expenses that will then take years to repay. All of that could be on top of the landlord having lost their own job and joined the ranks of the unemployed. So far, the CARES Act, the PPP program, or the EIDL contain no relief for small landlords. Small landlords find themselves in a really tough situation. Most completely understand the economic crisis and don't have the heart to evict a tenant during this tough economic time. Yet, unless they get relief from the requirement to pay property taxes, utilities, and mortgage payments, many are going to be financially squeezed beyond what they can endure. Yes, as a landlord, you can build wealth slowly over a period of years. It usually comes from the debt reduction on your property. But you know what? You can go broke too. The risks of owning residential real estate are substantial, especially during a crisis like the one we face today. Thanks for joining me.